As we get started, this was actually, we had a client come to us and tell us about a year ago that they were really looking at doing a mobile site, and we did some exploration and finally decided that we were going to offer that as like a product, almost a commoditized product for some of our clients. And so we adapted that custom CMS that we have to automatically, if we turn on a single flag in a table in the database, to add the classes that are needed to activate the jQuery mobile stuff for them at m dot and then their URL. So automatically now, this is a good example of if I were to go to NCFE, it's the same content, only difference being this is the mobile version with jQuery mobile turned on, and it's awesome. I love jQuery mobile. It was a fun talk to listen to. Okay, so responsive design. How many of you guys have ever done responsive design and development? Anybody in here? Awesome. So as we talk about this today, bounce ideas. The last time I gave this talk, I go, who have you done a responsive design? There were like 100 people in the room and nobody had done one. So it was kind of an awkward talk because they were like, viewport tag? What? Huh? Is that part of the HTML3 spec? And it was a mess. So just as a general overview of the responsive designs that we've done, we decided to start doing responsive web development at Vistacom in November of last year. So it's been just under a year. November 1st, I think, was the first time that a client committed to doing one. And since then, we haven't sold a regular site. Not one of our clients has sat through the spiel that you guys are going to hear in the first 5 or 10 minutes of this talk and made the decision, you know, we don't want a responsive site. We want to go just with a static 960 pixel wide site. And so if you guys are really wanting to do more of it, except most of the clients that you're talking to are like, I don't know, we really don't see the benefit, we don't really see the purpose or the business reason to move forward with responsive design at this point, rattle off a bunch of these stats, their eyes will go crossed, stars will appear in front of them, and they'll be excited about responsive development. So, and of course, if you've got any questions, let me know as we go through this. This is actually one of my favorite topics. I've been really excited about this for 3 or 4 years, ever since I read Ethan Marcotte's article on a list of parts. So like I said, if you got any questions, these are just a couple of designs that we've done. And like I said, most of the responsive stuffs are built right into our CMS, so we don't have to think about them. And I was telling somebody back right before I used the bathroom, which was not as weird as it sounds, that most of our clientele are billion-dollar plus market cap agribusinesses, and so they've got a very specific clientele who have a very specific type of browser, and that type of browser is IE. And so that's a lot of fun. We have one client, it's actually this client here, who when we looked at their Google Analytics, 93% of their visits in the last 9 months were IE8 or earlier. And so you guys, I guarantee, don't have a client that's got that set of clientele with that set of browsers. And so believe me when I say that half of the time that we've spent learning to do responsive web development has been spent learning to deal with that particular elephant in the room. And it's a lot of times we deleted more code than we kept, but it turns out to be working real good. I can actually open up any of these sites on IE6 or IE7, IE8, all the way back to Firefox 6, I think, is as far back as we've tested. Blackberries, any Android phone that you can think of, tablets, iOS, obviously. We even had somebody bring in an Apple Newton because of what Ethan Marcotte talked about with the Boston Globe working on an Apple Newton. We tested the Vistacom site, and it works great, except obviously, like images, because it didn't render image tags. But the actual links work, and the whole site was completely accessible on something as old as an Apple Newton. So let's talk about responsive web development. Now you know who I am. I'm going to go ahead and skip that slide. Just know that when we meet with clients, they ask, what is responsive? What's the responsive web? What does that mean to be responsive? And our response to them is this, that you create one site for every user on every device. It doesn't matter what they look at your site on, they'll be able to access the information on it and use it because it's responsive. And some of the devices that we've discovered recently viewing our sites are IE10 on an Xbox 360. You guys have gotten the new dashboard update. We must have had one of our clients who were testing that dashboard because a couple weeks ago we had that pop up on a 2560 by 1440 resolution monitor of some sort. My guess is that would be an Apple Cinema display or one of the cheap Korean knockoffs. But that's the kind of thing you just can't see happening, right? You can't prepare for it by making a different static site or a different static view for that particular size. And so responsive handles all that. Here's what responsive is. It's three things. One is a flexible grid-based layout. Second is flexible images and media. And the third is media queries that are used to determine the layout of the page. And that all sounds really simple, and it is really simple until you get into the nitty-gritty, the details of doing all that work. This is the seminal article, right? Like, this is the start of it all, the genesis of a movement, if you will, toward embracing the freedom of the web rather than looking at the web as the freedom of the web as a limitation. It actually is an amazing thing. Ethan Marcotte wrote this in May of 2010. If you've never read it, go read it. It's, I don't know, maybe a 15-minute read, but it will change the way you look at the web forever. And when I read that, I got super excited. And I thought back to an article that I had read, I think probably close to 10 years earlier, when I really began to get into web design as a job rather than just a hobby with occasional work in high school and early college helping people out. A Tao of Web Design by John Alsop. And this is one of those articles that when you read it, you think that it was written a couple of weeks ago, but he had the foresight to write it almost 12 years ago. And so, actually, at this point, 12 and a half years ago. And so go read this too if you get a chance. This is one that you'll be quoting for probably the next 15 or 20 years. And I want you to read this quote real quick. This is a quote from that article that really describes exactly what we're going to talk about today. I think the key phrase in that entire statement is the last sentence where he says, but first, before we can enjoy the freedom that the web offers, we have to accept the ebb and flow of things. And as a guy who has tested the sites that we're creating on over 100 devices, I can say there's a lot of ebb and flow. But other than screen size, device size, and speed, what do you guys think are some things that he could mean by the ebb and flow of things? Can you guys think of anything, any wild cards when it comes to the work that you guys do for web development?
Screen size.
Screen size is a great one.
Browser types.
Browser types is a great one, especially when it comes to the browser capabilities. That's always crazy. Yeah.
Misclicks.
Yes, misclicks is a good one. I heard another one.
Devices.
What's that?
Just devices.
Yeah, different devices. They can make a big difference. Yes, that's a good one too. My favorite one when it comes to client expectations is I want it to be the same on everything. You guys ever heard that? It's impossible, right? Like, it just can't happen. But clients just love to say, I want it to be pixel perfect on every device. What else? How about bandwidth? Maybe it's not as much of a big deal to you guys, but we have clients who are using mobile devices on 1x networks that they think are fast. Right? They don't have 3G yet. They just got data connections on their cell phones. And so they're pulling out their flip phones that have the mobile browsers in them and expecting that to be the internet. Right? And they're expecting to be able to use their websites on them. And that creates some significant problems if you don't factor that into your mobile development ideas and your mobile development thought process. If you just start from the beginning saying we're going to support Chrome on Android, and we're going to support Safari on iOS, and we're going to support the WebKit BlackBerry browsers, right? Not the actual BlackBerry browser because that's a broken piece of junk, but the WebKit-based BlackBerry browsers. If that's what we're going to support, and we're going to rock with that on mobile. The problem is, while that would cover 80% of your users, 20% are missing out. So a better question, other than what are the ebb and flow of things, are what are the things that you see that are changing the way that people use the web? Yeah, of course, screen size, device capabilities, browser capabilities, they're all changing. Every day something new is coming out. I remember when the iPhone was released, I was blown away. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. A 3.5-inch screen that had a 480 by 320 resolution. That was unbelievable. Couldn't believe it. Yesterday, HTC announced a phone in Japan that was 1080p. It's a 5-inch screen, 1080p. That's how far we've come in just 4 years. Here's the best question to ask yourself. What is happening that's changing the way that you use the web? Because believe it or not, the things that you're doing right now are the things your users are going to be doing a year from now. So as you begin to imagine the things that you're doing and how they're changing the way that the web is used in your life, if you prepare for those changes, in a year you'll look like you're a genius because you're ahead of the curve. And so those are the questions to ask when you're planning a project. So here's why we do responsive. This is what I'm talking about. This is the elevator speech that's actually the only work if you're at the Empire State Building, because it's actually kind of long. But clients are blown away by these numbers, and so they're willing to listen. This is the reason that we've talked to clients about doing responsive. In April of 2009, 25% of people who owned cell phones accessed the internet on their phones. Today, it's 53%. So in a little over 3 years, you've seen a doubling of the amount of people who are accessing the mobile web. But not the mobile web, the web on mobile devices, because I think that there's a big distinction between that. You can't, with responsive design, there's no separation, and so it's one site for every user and every device. Here's some more statistics. 55% of US adults access the web on their mobile devices. That's killer. 31% say that they use their phone as their primary browsing device. That means that they don't just pick it up when they have nothing else. That means they go to it first, that they use it more than they use a laptop or a desktop to browse the web. In 2013, at first it was at the end of 2012, but now they're thinking February of 2013 is when the mobile phones will overtake PCs as the most common web access device. Awesome. My mouse is fantastic. It's not PowerPoint, obviously, so you see it. Great. Okay, so here's a chart that shows exactly when that's going to cross. Do you see what's happening? We're having a 45-degree line, meaning that every year it's doubling how quickly that mobile traffic is growing. Here's a statistic that blew my mind. At this moment in time, there are 480 million Android devices in use. 400 million iOS devices are in use right at this very moment. As of right now, a total of 1 billion Windows PCs has been sold. That's not in use, that's 1 billion sold. That means in 4 years, there have been more Android devices active than Windows devices since November 20th, 1985. That's the growth of mobile. This was a statistic that was released 2 days ago. There are now 1 billion, 38 million smartphones, wait for it, in use today. That's not total sold, that's not total activated. That is 1 billion, 38 million smartphones using the web today. Right now, quarter 3 of 2012, we're in it. Smartphone PCs, we just left it. Smartphone shipments surpassed PC shipments. That means more smartphones were sold than PCs. We've seen a 600% growth in mobile web traffic since 2010. It's crazy what's happening in the mobile web. So this is really who our problem is. It's the guy who doesn't understand his smartphone. He's kind of a tool, right? Except he got that smartphone because his boss says that it'll help him sell more stuff. And he starts getting frustrated when the web doesn't work like it does on his 6-year-old laptop. So he's wondering what's going on. He hates it, and he leaves the site. That's the key right there. The user experience is king. Everything that we do has one purpose, and that's making user experience better. So here's the impact of what happens when you don't design for mobile. 61% say they'll leave a site if it isn't mobile ready. The moment they land on it, if it's a desktop-only site, they're gone. That's a problem. That means you're only getting 39% of the traffic you normally would. 79% will immediately search for another site. So not only did you lose business, that business is going directly to a customer. If you have an established relationship with a customer and they land on your site and it's not mobile, 50% says that they will give their business to someone else even though they have an established business relationship with you. That's a huge loss. That's half of your business gone because you failed to design for mobile. Here's another one. 48% said that if a site didn't work on a mobile device, they're offended. They're literally mad about it and they feel like the company doesn't value their business. What is the one thing a business wants more than anything else? Business, right? Obviously, they want customers. And that's why they always say the customer's always right. because they want to make you as a customer feel like they value your business. So by simply designing a desktop-only site, you're telling half of the people who would be your customers that you don't value their business, because that's how they see it. You might as well write that at the top of the page. Oh, you're here on a mobile device? We don't value you. It's important. Here's another statistic that blew my mind when I read it, but now it makes perfect sense. 2.5 a month versus 24 a day. That is the difference between app downloads and site visits. This is what we show a client that comes to us and says, we need a mobile app. We want it to be exactly like our website, but we want it to be, an app, like Appy, like Appfeely. That's the reason why, for the most part, apps are not a solution, unless you need something native. At which point, it's totally a solution. Awesome. Here's the other statistic that really helped us drive home with our clients why responsive is the right solution. They'll come to us and say, but only a few of our clients are accessing our site on mobile. It's not a huge number. It's 8%, it's 10%, it's 12%. Is it really worth the added cost? In the first month after West Virginia University launched their responsive design site, they saw a doubling of their traffic in the first month alone. That tells me immediately that people weren't using the desktop site on a desktop because that's what they surf the internet on, but just because the user experience on mobile was so bad, they just didn't go there and use it. And so that's the power of a responsively designed site. So let's talk about how to make the web responsive, because that's really what we're here to talk about today. And it's not just making the web responsive, because jQuery Mobile, now that I've seen some of the things that it can do, it's going to be part of every responsive site that I do. Really what it is how do we make the web more usable for everyone? How do we make the web more tolerable? Because right now, if you're on a mobile device and you land on a desktop site, it's not even tolerable. It's hard to use, if not impossible. I booked my hotel tonight that I've got for tonight and tomorrow night on my way here in my car on Priceline.com. Okay? And I don't do like the whole, just get me a hotel, here's $200 a night. I do the bid thing, right? Do you guys bid for your hotel on Priceline? I got like two DoubleTree room for 2 nights for like $42 a night, $51 after tax. Right? I love doing that. I feel like I win, right? It's like eBay, like shot victoriously. And I'm like, yes, $51 after fees. And I was all excited about it. But it took me an hour and a half on my phone because it was horrible. And really, I could have done like an hour of freelance work and made more than that money back that I saved, but something like man about it, right? Like I feel like I'm a hunter-gatherer and tough and I conquered something. Unfortunately, it wasn't usable. So really the point of a responsive web is to make it usable for people like me who are in the car driving and I don't want to take the laptop out and I just want to use my phone. The first thing is flexible grids. The old standard, like we talked about earlier today, was the 960 pixel wide grid system, right? It's columns and it's rows. With a flexible grid, that doesn't work anymore. This is what it used to look like, right? Where you would have 12 classes, and each one of those classes would have a certain width. And if an item was supposed to be three columns wide, you'd put 3 underscore grid as its class, and it would know just to make it 220 pixels wide. And then you'd float them if you needed them to be side by side, or if you wanted to, you could put them in a table, because it really didn't matter. Except I'd judge you for that. And this is what it ended up looking like, right? Where you had 960 pixels, it looked great, it worked great, it wasn't a big deal. And it did. It worked fine on monitors, because that's really what 99% of the web traffic was 5 years ago, was desktop monitors. In fact, if you were to look at the statistic, I think 8 years ago, 97% of web traffic was either 1024 by 768 or 1280 by 1024. 960 pixels worked great. But then something happened. This happened. This changed the way that we viewed the web forever. It was no longer, let's just build for a desktop. Instead, we had people using this. And 320 pixels was the width. The problem was that we told every single website that we built it was 960 pixels wide. And so to adapt to that, the mobile browsers would zoom it way out and make it almost impossible to use. And I know you guys have used mobile devices on desktops, so you know what I'm talking about. And then this happened. The iPad came out. I know that's a disgusting, it's got like the Android buttons at the bottom, right? But with like the home button on an iPad. I don't know what that is. It's something that one of our designers bought. Whatever. But you see there that that's not 960 pixels either. And so you've got a different zoom level, still unusable. And so what can you do now? What are the things that the web has built, browsers have built into them, that you can do now to fix this problem? The first one are flexible grids, obviously. Pixels are out and percents are in. Doesn't matter. 100% is 100% is 100%. And it doesn't matter what you're looking at the site on. It knows 100% means as wide as I am. This is the Vistacom site that we just launched a couple of months ago. As you can see, it's the same content. There are no changes at all whatsoever. The only difference is the layout. 100% width means different things to different devices, but it all works just fine on all three. This is if you were going to do a grid system, and if you're using SAS, how many of you guys use SAS or less on a daily basis? We use SAS only because most of our designers are also programmers, and so SAS just makes a little bit more sense to a developer's mind than less. I don't know why, but that's what they wanted to use, so that's what we use. And these are what we use for mix-ins, right? Like we say, or extendings. So we say we create these classes, and then for a certain media query, the sidebar column extends class 4, right? And so there's that width. And so we use that to define how wide things are. If you're using actual CSS, this isn't the right thing to do. Because you put that class on one thing, you say, oh, this is class 4. You have to tell every media query what 4 wide is. And that just doesn't make sense. Here's some important CSS that we've added. I'm giving you guys sort of like the inside scoop to the things that we do. I would love to hear the things that you do, because I really believe that everybody's got it like 80% right. And so hopefully by combining those things, we can get better. The first thing we do is border box. Do you guys know what box sizing with a colon border box is? There's nothing more annoying than saying each one of these things is 33.33333333% wide. And so they float up really nice next to each other until you add a 1 pixel border on them, right? And then they're 1 pixel too wide, so the third one like rotates down at the bottom, and you're cussing and swearing. And eventually what you do is you go into JavaScript and you say this thing has a width of window.width divided by 3 minus 1, and you assign that statically in line thanks to JavaScript, and then it works, and you're excited until window.width, you open it in Firefox, right? And then it doesn't use the window.width the same way Chrome does, or the same way IE9 does, which is different than IE8, which is different than IE10, and you've just created this horrible mess for yourself. By doing box sizing colon border box, what you're saying is everything, including the border in, is included in the width that I give this item. So when you say it has a width of 50%, you're saying it's a width of 50% including the border. And so you save yourself that whole mess. Right, it defaults in CSS, it defaults to content box, which means everything including padding and border and margin is outside that width. This includes padding and border. There's a margin box too, but you have a problem with your brain if that's what you use. We assign a row class to the container. Like a lot of people call them wrappers, but we use nested wrappers. And so a row is, we use this row where we just say it's a width of 100%. There's no percent there. There should be. A max width of 1600 pixels is what we do for a lot of sites, so it doesn't keep going as stuff gets wider. It sets itself a max of 1600. It just helps with the layout. And it clears both. So if there's anything that's floated above them, it doesn't mess with the layout. And then obviously a column or columns that has the float on it, etc. All right, media queries. These are awesome. We've been using media queries since I think the late 90s when we say like media type print, and we have a separate print style sheet. In a lot of ways, that's a media query, right? It queries the media and sees that we're printing it to a page, and it changes the design of the site. Here in media queries with responsive design, you're using different media queries to determine different layouts depending on screen size and type. The nice thing about media queries is if they're done correctly, they're device agnostic. There's nothing in the world I hate worse than going into a CSS file and seeing like a media query with only screen and device orientation landscape, right? And there's a different layout for a landscape device versus a device that doesn't or can't tell the CSS that it's a landscape device. For instance, this is a landscape device, correct? You guys agree with me there? The actual projector itself has a landscape orientation. It's 1280 by 800. This is a landscape orientation with a resolution of 1280 by 800. The problem with using a landscape orientation is that Chrome browser can't tell or will test false to that media query because it doesn't have an orientation. And so it's important when you're designing media queries, if you want them to be truly device agnostic, you say something like media only screen, and we'll get to that right here. Media only screen and a minimum width of 480 pixels, and then 600 pixels, and then 768 pixels, or whatever your breakpoints are. It's what you set. It's the business case that you have. It's what you're designing for. But what this allows you to do is above the media queries, you can put all the CSS for your mobile design, right? Or what you want it to look like on a mobile device. And what's really awesome about that is IE8, IE7, IE6, they won't read anything that's in these media queries, and so they'll automatically load the site in the mobile resolution or the mobile layout, which means it's fast, which means you don't have all of that JavaScript and everything else that you would put inside a media query that would really slow it down. One caveat. I've never met a client yet that's like, you know what, I don't care if IE8 looks completely different than every other browser. I want it to look the same. And so in a little bit, we'll get into some methods to make that happen. But then as you move up the media query, or as your screen resolution increases, every one of these media queries comes into play and overrides the one before it, which means you can design for mobile, like Mark was talking about, and as the screen resolution increases, you can just slightly change the way that the content on the site lays out. Okay, so viewport. This is the killer. This is extremely important, and I know that Mark talked about it a little bit, but I really want to emphasize how important this is. By putting the initial scale to 1 and the width equals device width, what you're saying is what your resolution, not your pixel width or your screen width is, but what your pixel width is whatever it's set to in the device. On an iPhone and on an Android device, it's set to 160 pixels per inch approximately, which means that when a normal, like an iPhone 4S or an iPhone 5 loads a website, it doesn't look like it's, what is the resolution width of a new iPhone? Is it 640? Is that what it is? Yeah, that's the actual resolution of the phone, right? It's 640 by 960, I believe, is the actual resolution of like an iPhone 4S. It doesn't load the 640 pixel wide design because while its actual resolution is 640 pixels wide, the browser reports itself as 320, and so it uses the mobile CSS and the mobile media query. If you don't set the width equal to device width, that won't happen, and all kinds of nonsense happens. It's crazy. And so the first time we did a responsive design, we excluded that, and it took us about a week to figure out why nothing was working right. So the initial cell sets the zoom to 100%. Viewport is set by that. But here's the IE10 and the WinRT gotcha. Have anybody used Windows 8 yet? Fan? Okay, I'm just going to say that I'm a Microsoft fanboy. I love IE8 or Windows 8. The problem with Windows 8 and Windows RT, I'm the only one in the room, and I don't even care. I'm loud and proud. Dang it! I'm the silent majority. Everybody wants an Apple, they just can't afford one, so they use Microsoft. All right, so the problem with WinRT, it has something called snap mode, which I don't know if you guys have seen yet, but you can take a browser and you can, even on the like the Surface, like the RT, the ARM-based version, you can snap a browser to the right 25% of the screen. And then when you do that, it automatically sets the width to 400 pixels, and then you can do something else over on the left. So you can load up a video while you're surfing the web on the right, or you can be typing something while there's content up on the right. Whatever it is, you have two windows open at one time. Microsoft, in its infinite wisdom, broke the viewport meta tag when you snap in snap mode in Windows RT. I don't know why. I have no clue. But they thought that, you know what we're going to do? Whoops. What we're going to do is we're going to make it so you have to declare in your CSS file, not even in like the meta tags in the head of your HTML, we're going to make you declare a specific media query and then put a second viewport in the CSS that's specific to us. So this is what you've got to put in the CSS file of a site to stop IE10 and WinRT from breaking everything, which is awesome. So write this down. I just figured this out the other day while I was playing with it. So yeah, you want to write that down. I have absolutely no idea why they did that. This is going to be a big thing. Evidently, they've already sold 1 million Surfaces. So it's a thing, right? Like, it's not going to flop like Windows Phone 7 did. Okay, so here's some other meta tags to put in. Like I said, a majority of people will soon be browsing on mobile devices. a lot of them are going to be using feature phones. And so what this allows you to do is older feature phones and older smartphones that don't have modern browsers will still be able to use your site if you declare mobile optimized, set to 320 pixels wide, and handheld friendly to true. All right, so polyfills. How many of you guys know what a polyfill is? You guys using polyfills today? They're awesome. I love them. I use them a lot. Basically, they're JavaScript files that make IE8 act like a modern, IE7 too, act like a modern browser. The problem with them is they're very huge when it comes to bandwidth, and they make the site really slow. So IE8 users either get the mobile version of the site or they get a really slow, crappy user experience. And every single time, our clients have opted for slow, crappy user experiences. Yeah. Yeah, you know, Pi is a polyfill. It's a fancy term for making IE8 not suck as much. The problem with these are, like I said, they're just very slow. But we put this in the head of every single one of the sites that we design that just says, if you're less than IE8 and you're not IE8 mobile, load these 3 things. So you can use, if you've ever used Selectivizer, it allows you to use things like first child, next child, last child, you know, most of the pseudo selectors in CSS. Image Sizer properly resizes images in IE. One of the problems with IE is if you don't set a maximum height and a maximum width on an image, just a maximum width, it'll stop growing width, but it'll keep getting taller as the window gets wider, which is the weirdest thing in the world, right? And it totally jacks with images, so that stops that from happening. And then respond.min.js spins through the CSS and the HTML and inline styles everything based on what viewport you're on, or what screen size you're on. So it makes media queries work, basically, very slowly. Okay, so here's your best friend in the whole world. How many of you guys use Modernizer? Even if you're not doing responsive, you should be using Modernizer because it's awesome. It allows a lot of functionality to be inserted into the browser. It allows you to do this. It tests for up to 102, I think it is up to now, HTML5, CSS3, and JavaScript APIs. And then depending on whether or not that particular functionality is there, you can load one of 2 different JavaScript files, CSS files, whatever. So we use that a lot to test for things like geolocation, functionality, etc. Now, one of the things we also use it for is loading pi.js. So if it's IE8 and it can't do CSS gradients, we'll load pi.js. So that's one of the things we use it for. It also does 2 more things. It adds an HTML5 shiv, so you can start using things like article and aside, section, most of those other semantic HTML5 HTML tags in all the way back to IE6. And it also adds these awesome classes on HTML. So when you're in your CSS file and you say, all right, this has rounded corners. And obviously, rounded corners don't work real well in IE8, IE7, or at all in IE6. What it allows you to do is say, all right, so here are the styles for everything else. But if there's a class of no dash CSS gradients, I know I've got to do something else for the gradient background I want to put on my body. So I can say on the body, and then you can use the CSS gradient rules, and then you can say for .no dash CSS gradient space body, right, I want to use this particular image as the background to my site. So let's talk a little bit about code. Let's go through a little code and just talk about responsive design, responsive development. So this is a site I threw together a couple of weeks ago for Twin Cities Code Camp, and it is just your basic responsive design. And at this point, it's just fluid grids, right? I mean, there's not a whole lot to it. It doesn't change or anything. It just makes things bigger or smaller. And really what we want to do is we want to open up Notepad++. Hi there. And this is the style sheet for the site. It's real simple. There's not a whole lot to it. Going over a few things in the code before we get into actually typing code. This huge block of nasty, ugly, awful text at the top is a bunch of conditional statements that determines if what version of IE we're looking at and adds specific classes to adjust to them. This is my favorite thing in the whole world right here. Rather than having a separate IE style sheet, right in line with the rest of your styles in your main style sheet, if you do something like this, you can just preface a style with .oldie, and then whatever the class is, and you can enter IE8, IE7, IE6 specific styles. So you're not jumping around between style sheets, comparing styles, but instead it's all just in that one style sheet, which is awesome. And then, of course, the Node.js is for Modernizer. We've got the standard meta tags that we talked about. This one is a hack, but it's important. Anybody know what that does? That's it. IE equals edge. What it does is says, if you're in compatibility mode, come on out. We don't want you in compatibility mode. We don't want you rendering the site as IE7, obviously. No one does. And so it forces them out, which is really important, especially if your users use MSN.com, because MSN.com forces them into compatibility mode, which is fantastic because that's the loading page of every IE, right? Which, whatever, makes no sense to me, but that's what they do. Chrome equals 1 is something that we discovered about 6 months ago. If a user's installed Chrome Frame inside of IE because their business won't let them install Chrome or something like that, that automatically loads the site in Chrome Frame. So they don't have, even if it's IE7 with Chrome Frame installed, that'll automatically load Chrome Frame for them whether they want it to or not, but they won't ever know. But what it does is it makes all of that extra JavaScript, et cetera, irrelevant. Awesome. This right here is Matt Kersley's mobile menu. What it does is it takes a menu, it's just a UL like this here, and as you shrink the site and you hit a certain breakpoint, it turns it into a dropdown. And you guys know dropdowns on mobile devices are awesome, right? They pop open a special UI box that's specific to the OS and it's really easy to touch. And then when you select one, it just redirects to that particular site. And so that's what that plugin does. The problem with it, and we just discovered this a couple of weeks ago, is that depending on if you're in Firefox or not, window.width in jQuery returns a different width than the media query does, because it includes, in Firefox and IE9 and IE10, it includes the scroll bar, right? Which is what the JavaScript spec says to do. Chrome and IE8 do it wrong. Chrome, Safari, and IE8 do it wrong. They don't include that scroll bar, but that's important because the media query that you're running doesn't either. And so in Firefox, if you use window.width, the thing, as you get smaller or you get bigger, that breakpoint actually happens at a different point than the media query does. And so that it tends to mess up the design. There's a fix out on GitHub that I just put up last week that uses the JavaScript function match media, which says if this media query is fired, then do this. And it's only supported in Firefox, Chrome, and Safari, and IE9 and 10, but it doesn't matter because IE8 does it incorrectly, which is actually correct. Anyway, let's look at some of this. So we've just got our basic HTML here. Let's jump over into the styles. The first problem that you'll notice with this particular layout is these are way too wide. There's no reason why at a desktop resolution those should be at 100% width. And we don't want this sidebar to rotate up to the right of the main content area on a tablet view, but there's also no reason why it should stay one column wide. So a real easy way to just make all of that rotate correctly is to just come into this media-only screen and a minimum width of 768 pixels and say, I want my sidebar. And I think each one of those boxes in there is an article. I'll have to look just to be 100% certain. I want each one of those to have a width of 33.33, et cetera, percent, and I want them to float left. Save that. We'll come back over here. We'll hit refresh on this, and immediately you can see that that solution is partially solved, right? And that's a better layout. The images look better like that. But the problem is when you get up to a desktop view, you already have this problem. It's nice, but it's not a very good use of space. And this content area up here is way too wide for good readability. And so the way media queries work is as you rotate down into this next media query, we're going to go all the way down here. Yeah, we'll just start here. And so the media query, or the rules inside the next media query will overwrite what's above. So if I were to go .sidebar article and say I want their width to be 100% and I want the float to be none, wow. Immediately, those are going to overwrite the previous media query. And we can see that by jumping back in here. And we have the same problem, right? That problem's still there, but you can see it overwrote that. So if we were to, we hit that, we get outside of that viewport size, and they rotate back up. But once we get higher than 992 pixels wide, that CSS is overwritten. So really what we want to do then is we want to take those and rotate them up to the right. And so we say, I don't remember what that content area is called. Okay, content. So .main should have a width of 66 point. Don't you wish computers could do what you think? That would be awesome. I can't wait for that. So I can just think, I want it to be 66.666666% wide. And it knew to enter the word width. And so we're going to say float left. And then the sidebar, we want to fill the rest, so width of 33.333333%. I want to have that float right. The reason I go so far out on my decimal places is there's no spec in CSS. Hold on just a second. There's no spec in CSS as to what to do with that third of a pixel that's left over, right? Firefox just drops it and rounds down. Chrome rounds to the nearest pixel. Let's see what else is there. IE10 will try and render partial pixels, right, which never works right, ever. And so that ends up breaking. And so being as specific as possible in your percentages, what that allows the browser to do is get a lot closer to what you're actually wanting it to do. You have a question?
Yeah, do media queries actually change the specificity calculation?
No. But if identical specificities will be overwritten by the media queries. But if you have a more specific CSS rule in an earlier media query, it won't be overwritten.
If you move that media query, though, to the top of your file, would it still jump?
Yeah, because it's not based on where it is in the file, but rather where it is in the width. Because right here it says that you've got a minimum width of 768 pixels. So as soon as you hit that breakpoint, it's going to apply these styles and overwrite identical styles before it.
So regardless of its location in the actual document, you can think of it as being a 10-minute width.
Yes, because if you use min width, you're going from from 320 or whatever it is out. If you use max width, you're designing for the maximum and then going in, if that makes sense. So we've got our styles there that will override what was in 768. Whoop, I hope I hit save. And then there you can see that they overwrote that style and they floated it up to the right. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? It's pretty easy, right? It works really great in Chrome. This site looks like trash in IE because I just made it for Chrome. So make sure that when you're testing it on as many sites or as many browsers as you can, because even a site as simple as this has some gotchas that you'll only catch through testing. All right, let's continue. That's what a designer thinks a developer looks like, just so you're aware. Okay, so is this magic? Of course not. It's science. Woo! Okay. So here are some things that you can do soon. You can't do them right at this very moment, but they're coming down the pipeline, and they're coming much faster than you can imagine. This is a CSS3 template layout. This is awesome. A, B, C, and D just replace with your favorite classes and or CSS selectors. If you were just to change that to this, you've got your layout. You see how that makes much more sense than floats? And if you decided that you want to have a 12-column layout, you just have 12 CSS selectors across, and then however many rows that you have, and you can adjust your 12-column layout like that. So that's CSS3 template. It's from that to that. It's in the Canary build of Chrome. It doesn't work in Firefox at all. I'm told that they're working on it. IE is IE, whatever. And then Safari obviously will have it because Chromium is basically the WebKit driver at this point. This is CSS3 Flexbox. It actually works now in a lot of browsers. The problem is that the syntax of it has changed 3 times in the last 2 years. They've mostly got it nailed down now, but this is awesome. This is really complicated, and it gets more and more complicated every time they change it. So if you want to use it, you can. I would suggest waiting for a CSS3 template and just using floats because it's actually more stable than that. REST is responsive design and server-side components. I am a front-end developer. If I have to write in C#, I can. I hate it. I can't stand it. Visual Basic makes me want to pluck my eyeballs out. And even PHP, while it's a scripting language, the server side of it makes my skin crawl. But really, the holy grail of responsive development is being able to serve different images and media to different devices based on the device itself, right? And this really is the holy freaking grail of responsive design. Because when it's all said and done, if you serve the same image, to every device, the mobile browser, the mobile device, is the device that has the worst handicap. Because you're serving a huge desktop image to a little itty bitty device with really slow bandwidth. And if you design your site to be fast on a mobile device, it's all pixely and gross on a desktop. So really, the future of responsive development is different images and media based on type. And there are 2 ways to do that. The first one is one that we attempted to implement at Vistacom, and it got really complicated, and so nobody used it. But in .NET, you can create custom tags that then activate things on the server, and magic happens, and like pixie dust makes different images appear on the screen based on screen resolution. It uses the Wurfel library to determine what device is looking at it, and then depending on that, it serves up the right size of image. This is easier. And while it doesn't work right at this very moment, 2 months ago, this didn't exist as a thing, and now it's already in the CSS3 spec. That's how popular this particular post on the W3 forum was. It got more upvotes than every other post in the history of the forum combined. That's how badly people want it. And so Chrome and Firefox are already working on implementations. They should be coming down the pipeline very soon. There are already polyfills that will make this work in non-Chrome and Firefox browsers. And so it will be working very soon. And really what you say is, I want a picture, just like you'd say I want a video or I want an audio. Here's the alt text of this particular picture. And then you have a source set and a media. So the first source is this is on everything. And then it goes up just like a media query would from there. And then the image tag at the bottom is in case it just isn't supported. It'll just serve up the image. So you just give them the smallest image. This is available now. I hadn't heard of it until 2 weeks ago at Twin Cities Cocaine, but somebody showed it to me, and it's fantastic. It's awesome. I can't wait to use it on an actual site. Scott Jail from Filament Group created this polyfill. What it does is it uses basically the same syntax as the picture element. The only difference is that it uses divs. And so it works really well. So go check it out, picturefill.js. It's awesome. And so basically, people want mobile-friendly sites now, not two years from now. So responsive design is ready. Just do it. Any questions? Yeah.
I have a question about the drop-down menus for mobile. I started noticing that being used quite a bit more. But has anyone done any user tests? The first time I saw it, I did double take. And I was like, what menu? Is that my menu? And I was like, well, sure enough. Here I am surfing this button.
95% of using something is intuitive.
The other 5%
is learned behavior.
And at this point,
we're far enough into the whole responsive design thing and mobile web thing
that
drop-downs as menus are fairly intuitive for users.
That being said, this responsive script that Matt Kinsey came out with, Kearsley, has a property on it for your top option text. And in this case, it's set to mobile menu, our main menu. You can set that to whatever you want. And so it can say touch here for menu. It can say quick links. It can say main menu. On one of the sites that we have, we've done design for. If you hit refresh on this, depending, it happens at page load. Depending on whether it's a desktop or not, it'll either say quick links in the top right corner, or if you load it in mobile, less than 768 pixels, it will say main menu. And so people know to look for that. And the cool part about mobile devices is a select box looks different on every device. And so it stands out on the page. It doesn't look like that on an iPhone. It doesn't look like that on an Android phone. And so people see that, they know to touch it, and then it pops up that awesome like OS specific box, and then you can select stuff. It's great. And so people love it. We've done user testing with it, and wow, this works. Where you've got the touch. That's actually a touch. That doesn't do anything because, like I said, you want to design for touch devices. But while that works. People can use it. They must prefer the drop down model of menu. So. Any other questions? Great. Let's take a quick 3-minute bathroom. Oh yeah.
So I don't live in the front end world as much. Where do you find out this information, like the IE equals angle 1? Like where does that stuff come from? Is it
the interwebs? Here's what I found. There are a couple of Twitter accounts that I follow that I click on every link that they post because it's so relevant to what's coming in the next couple of months. Twitter.com/RWD is actually Ethan Marcotte's responsive web design specific Twitter account, and that's all he posts there are awesome examples of responsive websites as well as bleeding edge information on the gotchas you're going to see soon. What's that? Can you repeat it one more time? Yeah, RWD is the Twitter tag, responsive web design. The IE thing was a gotcha that I stumbled across when we put Windows 8 on an old XO PC for one of our salespeople to test out. And when we snapped that IE, what's called Metro. I think they're calling Metro Now browser. Over to the right side, it broke the whole responsiveness. It looked like junk, didn't quite lay out correctly. And so by adding that into the style sheet, I had to look it up because I wasn't sure what was happening. But by Googling it, I was able to
a lot of things are getting rolled into boilerplate. And boilerplate, you download the commented version. You can just read the comments about every little tag and why it's there. It's really informative. Yeah. So a lot of the things is mentioning that rolled into 5.0.
Reading good code.
Which one?
Reading good code is still the best way to learn.
Yeah, for sure.
We use Andrew Clark's 320 and up, which is an awesome HTML5 responsive boilerplate. There's the Twitter. What's it called? Twitter Bootstrap. Twitter Bootstrap is another good one. I don't like the UI elements of it because it messes with our designs. But it's great for HTML and responsive learning. The HTML5 Bootstrap is another really good one. If you just search for a responsive boilerplate, there are about 100 of them, and 99% of each one is the same because they all just copy from each other. So whatever one's the newest is the one that has the new thing, and then everybody else has that new thing in the next version. Basically, that's awesome. Well, thanks, guys. Real short break?
Yeah. We'll do another 5-10 minute-ish break, and then